driving across the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, listening to Together by our then and now Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murtha, focusing on this issue of loneliness. And all of a sudden I hear him talk about Laura Talmus and Beyond Differences. I went, wow, that's really important. Following the very unexpected and tragic death of their daughter, Lili Rachel Smith, in October of 2009, Laura Talmus founded Beyond Differences with her husband, Averell A. Smith. Laura is passionate about bringing awareness to the issue of adolescent social isolation, which, sad to say, has gotten quite worse in the last 2 years. And she's now the full-time director of Beyond Differences. And what's unique is it's a student-led social justice organization dedicated to not only addressing the issue, but solving the issue in middle schools. And I was a middle school teacher, and I know how lovely people can be in middle school. But Beyond Differences has gone beyond even that. They've created the social emotional learning curriculum, which I was amazed is used in 9,000 schools in all 50 states. And Beyond Differences is known for a holiday that I've known since they started it, and one you would want to know about, called No One Eats Alone Day. Laura has been feted with awards and recognitions in so many areas. She received the AARP Purpose Prize Fellow, the Jefferson Prize. She received the MLK Humanitarian Award from here in Marin's Human Rights Commission, the Courageous Leaders from the Jewish Community Relations. But she has another distinction that most speakers, most people I know don't have. Earlier this year, and this is a callback to Dr. Vivek Murtha, our Surgeon General, was testifying in Congress, and he was talking about loneliness and social isolation, and he talked about Beyond Differences and Laura Talmus in his presentation. Our speaker, our friend Laura Talmus, is written into the congressional record. So with that, I want to introduce my fellow Marinite, who is also a grandmother, and I can attest to 2 beautiful grandchildren, and is awesome, dear friend, Laura Talmus.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much. What a pleasure to be here. And I appreciate the opportunity to come and meet with all of you and meet you all in advance. This is an incredible lineup and incredible biographies and such an eclectic and interesting group of people. So well worth getting up for. And I can see you do this every Wednesday morning. You have so much fun together. It's really beautiful. So thank you. Susan has shared an awful lot with you in advance. So perhaps I will start my screen share. And hopefully we will get this going. I have a short presentation for you. And here we go. I hope that this, I'm not the biggest techie in the world here, but I'm not sure exactly. Maybe the view would be slideshow. There we go. Thank you very much. So as Susan mentioned, my name is Laura Talmus. I have been friends with Patricia and Susan for decades and decades and decades. And Patricia and I have been running together and eating breakfast as a reward after our runs together for over 40 years. And we still try to catch walks together whenever we can. So again, it's an honor to be here. I wanted to share with you today a story that is a bit of a love story, as well as the beginning of a movement. As Susan mentioned, my husband and I tragically lost our daughter, Lili Rachel Smith, in whose memory we founded Beyond Differences in 2009. Lili was born with a very rare cranial facial anomaly, and we really were shocked when she was born the evening of April 3rd. Her birthday was just last Sunday as well, 1994. And for those of you who have been parents or grandparents, the last thing in the world you expect is to have a child with differences. But in fact, we were given the news the next morning, and the first thing I ever asked was, we can manage just about anything you throw at us, but is this life-threatening? And we were assured it was not. We began everything in earnest to raise Lili in the most positive and perfect way we could. We're lucky to live in the Bay Area with the best medical providers and innovative surgeons, and developed a network of friends, and raised Lili with an older brother who wouldn't have any of the fact that she had differences and insisted she go out and play basketball and ride bikes and do everything that younger sisters were supposed to do with their older brothers. And for many, many years, in spite of all of the surgeries that Lili needed to tolerate in order to correct the bony defects in her skull, she was absolutely incredible. She went to Montessori school. She went to our public school system here in Marin County, and everything seemed to be going well. As her mom, I could tell that when she arrived in middle school, which in our community began in 5th grade, that there was a bit of concern on my part that perhaps Lili was not going to fit in as much with the cliques as I think most of us remember middle school can be. It's all about climbing the ladder, fitting in, doing whatever it is that you need to do to belong. And no one had words in those days for issues around feeling isolated. But in fact, much to the interest of this story, Lili was never teased or bullied. In fact, all of the children that moved from public school to public school knew and loved Lili, but there was just this quiet, insidious leaving Lili out after a while, in which I used to get phone calls from Lili in middle school, probably by the middle of 6th grade and the beginning of 7th grade, crying for me to come pick her up because she was hiding in the girls' bathroom, and none of the girls understood but not wanted her to follow them into the cafeteria and have lunch at their table. It was an awful, awful time. And we had to decide as a family whether Lili was going to academically thrive or not in middle school. And after 2 years, we decided to listen to her voice and moved her to a homeschool situation for the remainder of middle school, which was almost 2 full years. Lili then chose, as a brave young woman with a very strong and determined mind and a big heart for social justice and for community service, that she did not want to go to a local high school. She wanted to start fresh in a new community and meet new friends. She was hoping to become accepted for who she was, and chose to go out of state to a high school boarding school. And she left in August of 2009, where we dropped her off at a beautiful overnight boarding school, a college preparatory boarding school that was part of the Quaker system called Scattergood Friends School in Iowa. And 7 weeks later, we got the call that changed our lives, that Lili had passed away in her sleep due to medical complications from her syndrome. I speak and have spoken to hundreds and hundreds of young audiences, and I'm always letting them know that nobody hurt Lili, and Lili did not hurt herself. In spite of the fact that she had struggles with her own popularity and fitting in, Lili did die of medical complications. And that's the tragedy of my family, but one in which grew and gave birth to the movement called Beyond Differences. Let me see here. We were founded about 6 months after Lili passed away by a group of her former classmates who came together and asked what they could do to honor Lili's memory. And what I chose was to talk about the words that we didn't even have in those days very easily, which was social isolation. We set out to inspire students themselves in middle school to create cultures of belonging so that everyone could come to school each day. And this is my North Star, where all the youth are accepted, valued, and included, no matter what their difference is. I know it's ambitious, but that's what we set out to do, because I believe that that's what would have made a big difference in Lili's experience in middle school. Well, what is social isolation and why do we care about that now? Those of you who are parents, grandparents, or even remember what it was like to go to middle and junior high school yourself, you remember what it is. There's an objective definition of social connection and social isolation, which is the number of people that we have around us being physically separated from others. But there's also a subjective perception of loneliness. And sometimes that's really how we feel personally, emotionally, relationally, and collectively. If we perceive a gap between our own desire for connection and how we actually experience it, that could be just as difficult and just as painful. And as we found out, is a very large public health crisis in our country. There is also this sense that even youth at school could feel socially isolated sitting at a busy lunch table where children are perhaps talking about something that they can't fit in and discuss as well, or there was a plan or a party that was held over the weekend and they were not there. So you could actually be looking like you fit in and absolutely have no idea what's going on, and you just feel worse and worse and worse every moment. We now know that social isolation actually has a very high mortality risk factor. This very complicated chart really, in essence, just says one thing: social relationships, and social relationships have a higher factor of increasing mortality than smoking 15 cigarettes a day, than in consuming excessive amounts of alcohol, than in drug or hypertension, not using drugs for hypertension, and certainly in breathing air that is polluted. This is actually quite serious, and we've known this for quite a few years. But in a moment, I will share with you that the beginning research on the social isolation effects on children did not begin until 2007. And if you recall that we began talking and forming our 501c3 in 2010, this is like at the very earliest moments of an evolutionary discussion of the effects of social isolation on youth. Now, when we first got started, and I had never actually heard the word social isolation, but I knew Lili was never teased or bullied, I started doing some research on my own. And I found out that social isolation was researched and expressed for seniors. We all understand that adults can be isolated. That is why there are pet delivery, pet visiting services, food delivery services, transportation services. All kinds of industries have grown up around socially isolated elder. And yet there had been no discussion about the impact and the public health impact on youth. So we began to do some research and found out first study was done in 2007, 2012, and 2014. And as Susan alluded to, it got a little bit worse as the pandemic heated up. What happens to youth? Worse health, stomach aches, headaches, heart health, BMI goes up. All kinds of consequences happen. We've had pediatricians come and speak with us, and we know that this is happening. We also know that the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal has reported higher incidence of loneliness, anxiety, and loss since COVID. This is not only since COVID, because the Surgeon General has reported many statistics about the increase in visits to emergency rooms, psychiatric clinics, the increase in suicide. We've lost 60,000 children, I believe, in the past 10 years due to increased suicide among adolescents. We know that there is anxiety, depression, self-harm, and suicide. And that has been exacerbated, but not only started by the pandemic. And on one further sober and somber note, Dr. Vivek Murthy, our Surgeon General, does not believe that our country is responding properly to the mental health issues of our youth. In fact, even in the last decade, we've now come to realize that from the first onset of symptoms to the point where some child is being treated, it's 11 years of a child suffering by themselves without always being able to articulate or get the kind of help at school or in the family that they need for their mental health. I don't have a background in this. I was a mom who saw what was happening with one child. And when I stood in front of my first few assembly programs that we presented to children here in our own community of Marin, I began to see all the children in the audience raising their hands, wanting to talk about what they felt and what they saw, and actually wanting to do something about it. The last thing we'll mention is, again, teen girls, teen boys. We can see what's happening here across our country. This is not a red state, blue state, suburban, urban, or rural problem. This has been going on all over the country, and parents are concerned about this and relatives are concerned. But what can we do about it? Well, thanks to those of us who have been supporting our small organization for the past 12 years, we have grown in ways, as Susan mentioned, that is absolutely astounding even to me. People say to me all the time, can you believe what you and your husband and all of your community has grown? And the answer is yes and no. I saw the need. We fit in at a time when nobody else was talking about this. We might have gotten lucky. And I did this in honor of my daughter, a mom who's on a path to keep her daughter's memory alive, knows no bounds on what she'll do in terms of that passion and that love. But I also saw, as an executive of a nonprofit and as a professional, that it was up to me to make sure that this organization was on the right path, we were doing something important, and that we were going to be well managed. So I know that that is something that I have brought, and I accept complete praise for all of that, but not for the fact that this is a problem in our country, because we do need to address this. Our approach has been more positive than negative. We believe in lifting up all students to become leaders in their school. We are not in the business of making those children who feel isolated or stigmatized or marginalized to feel even worse about how they are. So we really do lift all boats in that expression. And we really want to make sure that we take a very positive student-led approach to what we offer. As Susan also mentioned, we partner with now over 9,500 schools in all 50 states. We offer very specifically what's called social and emotional learning curriculum, or SEL is the shorthand for it. We offer student leadership activities designed for teachers to bring to their schools for 5th to 8th grade levels, although it is done quite a bit. Our activities are used in elementary, even in high schools. We now added on a very sophisticated layer of professional development, which is training teachers in schools, and we offer them a lot of support. As I mentioned, we have school counselors, teachers, and parents reaching out to us every day. So how we do this is now our 5 areas of work. So Beyond Differences became incorporated in 2010. We're in our 12th year now. And as I mentioned, we have social and emotional learning curriculum that wraps around the school year from the fall all the way through to the spring. We have our holidays that we created. The biggest one, we did it around Valentine's Day, because as we remember, if you were not treated to a little candy or a card when you went to school around Valentine's Day, it could feel really awful. So we picked our very first holiday, No One Eats Alone, as something that we could do and help children create friendships around Valentine's Day. That is now by itself celebrated in over 2,500 schools each year. We offer professional development training. The heart and soul of our organization's model has still always been the youth leaders themselves. And I spent quite a bit of time on public policy and lifting up elected officials and influencers to understand the importance of this issue. But I think it's caught up to us by now. And I'm just very grateful for being given a platform and a seat at many tables at this point. Youth leadership. It was a group of children. This is the founding story of Beyond Differences, which I really love to tell you about, because it was a group of children that came to Lili's memorial service that heard me eulogize about my daughter and why she left school. We did it quietly. We did it without a lot of blame and a lot of fanfare, but that created a group of children who wanted to do something. And that over the last 12 years has resulted in our National Teen Board of Rectors, which is made up of high school students from all over the United States, who are now the youth activists to make cultures of belonging a reality in schools across the country. We just got back from Austin, Texas. The lower left corner image was a group of our adult staff and youth at South by Southwest Education Conference. We speak at rallies, we lead assembly programs, and the kids themselves have their own overnight retreats where they learn skills and they learn how to teach our curriculum and mentor middle school students. So this is a high school to middle school mentorship program. We also take on tough subjects, and we are not for the faint of hearts. We took on the issue of bullying against Muslim American youth back in 2016 when we saw an uptick in hate against that community. We talk about LGBTQIA plus youth all the time. Children are transitioning, gender identity is changing. Things are happening earlier than we may even realize, but children are actually transitioning gender as early as 3rd and 4th grade. So it's important for us to not deny the fact that this is happening, but to actually be a resource for teachers, because oftentimes they are on the front lines where children are not even able to bring some of their own struggles home to their family. And teachers are being asked to serve in many, many roles that are very difficult. We took on the issue of hate against AAPI youth 2 years ago. A number of years ago, we went to the Oakland headquarters of a company called Ask FM, which quite frankly was just a social media platform allowing children to bully each other and express hate anonymously online. And so we basically told the CEO that we did not approve. And if he wanted to use our youth as consultants, we were standing ready. And we were covered by KGO Radio, who decided to come with us. It was quite incredible and a great learning experience for our teens. There's a t-shirt that was made by the very upscale company called Brandy Melville that took a slogan from the movie Mean Girls many years ago and said, "You can't sit with us." Well, we would have none of that. And so we did basically put a petition together and picketed in front of the store in San Francisco with permission of the store, covered on the evening news. Again, it was peaceful, but we taught our student leaders how to speak up in a kind way. And then we also took on issues, not that we are a gun violence prevention program, but as you can imagine, there is a correlation between social isolation and gun violence. Those youth who have been known to perpetuate violence against others have also been known to be those that are socially isolated. And if you ask the children in school if they knew who the gun perpetrators were, they would absolutely say as early as in middle school, they recognize those children. So this is a quite serious issue that we also can do something about by speaking up on social isolation. These are our 3 curricula: Know Your Classmates, No One Eats Alone, and Be Kind Online. They do wrap around the school year, and they give teachers lesson plans, worksheets, resources, again, taking on tough subjects. We get covered extensively on the news. All the Wave Telemundo just covered us last month or in February down in San Jose, but all over the country, we receive feedback on the celebrations of our curriculum and our activities at various schools all over the United States. We work in partnership with the New York City Department of Education, with the state of Florida, Los Angeles Unified. There really is not a state, and even in states that are highly conservative and very religious predominantly, we have teachers calling us and saying that they have children that are discussing suicide openly and really need resources from us. So it's all over the country. We also added on this layer of training teachers, and we have a professional development department at Beyond Differences. We train teachers this year in Dallas, Texas, the Bay Area, Nashville, Tennessee, Aurora, Colorado, and Phoenix, Arizona. We get grants to do this kind of work, and sometimes we get government contracts to do this work. And as I mentioned, I work a lot at the public policy level. I feel blessed to live in California, smart that I picked this as my home state 44 years ago, but our leadership is open. Here is a picture of our superintendent, Tony Thurmond. The chairwoman of the Board of Education is Dr. Linda Darling-Hammond, and the first partner. They all work with Beyond Differences on promoting and advancing social and emotional learning. This has now become the most important gesture that we can make for children. SEL used to be considered a luxury after academics, after this and after that, and it is not the case any longer. Children coming back from the pandemic are having a hard time knowing how to reconnect in person, knowing how to make eye contact with one another or with their teacher, knowing how to do simple tasks like picking a partner for a science lab project. We used to take these things for granted. We don't anymore. SEL should be taught by science teachers all the way to homeroom teachers, not just guidance counselors who end up with all of the problems on their plate with student behavior. This is the plate on which academics should be served. And I believe that there is an awakening in our country that is attesting to that fact. As Susan also mentioned, we have terrific partners from all over the United States. There's Dr. Vivek Murthy, who wrote the book together and was fortunate to cover Beyond Differences for a number of pages when he was in between his first and second term as United States Surgeon General. Up in the corner is Dr. Kelly Harding from New York City, who's written a book also featuring Beyond Differences called The Rabbit Effect. And we often bring in Dr. Harding to speak to our professional development cohorts so that teachers can understand how to spot trauma in the classroom and how to treat this as a public health crisis. Tony Thurmond is a dear friend. He asked me to serve on a task force for the state, which I did a couple of years ago. And Vice President Kamala Harris has been a longtime colleague and friend of mine and my husband's, as we have a background in politics, but she has done everything she could up to a point to support the growth of Beyond Differences. And she's been an incredible friend to us. And I just like to end with a very quick, if I can get this to work, which I think I can. This is about 1.5 to 2 minutes. And if you'll indulge me, this was just about 4 weeks ago. Someone called me and said, "Did you know that Dr. Murthy just talked about Beyond Differences?" I hope that this is it, but I don't know. Oh, no, I don't know. Let me just go back a second. This may not work, but this is okay. I'm going to send this deck out, perhaps to Susan, who, if you are in a habit of sharing presentations with one another, to feel free to share this. And listen, it's about a 2 to 3 minute clip in which Dr. Murthy calls out 4 strategies for improving and responding to the epidemic of social isolation and loneliness. And he says that Beyond Differences is an impactful program that is worthy of our country's investment in order for it to scale. My hope would be that every child goes to school in America, attending a school where there is a teacher using our curriculum and programs. I should have mentioned that we don't charge anything for our programs or for our curriculum. We send them out free. All we ask is that teachers sign up so that we can give them updates as soon as they're published. My husband and I felt very determined that if we could raise the money to keep our organization going and increase it every year, we would prefer to do that than charging teachers and schools, because oftentimes teachers are asked to pay for supplies from their own pocketbooks, and we just did not want that to be the case. We also know that about 68% of our schools are what's called Title I, federally subsidized and reduced lunch program schools, and they can't afford to be bringing expensive curricula, T-shirts and activities to their school. So we are blessed to be able to keep a budget going and grow each year, which leads me to my second to last slide, which is that a week from today, actually a week from tomorrow, we have our annual gala. First time we're coming back together in person, although it is virtual and hybrid. So if you prefer to watch our presentation online, please feel free to sign up on our beyonddifferences.org website. And if you do feel like you'd like to come, it will be at the new Michael Mina property in Tiburon, the Bungalow Kitchen. Upstairs, we've taken over the top level, open roofed. It should be very, very safe. and we're almost at capacity. So we would really love you to watch from home or come with us in person. Either way, we subsist entirely on philanthropic donations. A little bit these days is coming in now through contracts because of the COVID relief money flowing down through schools and school districts, but mostly it's been fundraising thanks to the generosity of so many companies, foundations, and individuals. So that is my presentation, and I will stop sharing. And I hope that wasn't too much. I am happy to answer questions. And thank you for giving me the time.
Laura, I can't thank you enough. I learned more what you are doing, having been a teacher in the middle schools, what you are doing, and having had one of our family friends here in Marin, granddaughter, whom I know, commit suicide because of this last February. What you are doing is amazing. I am now on my phone. So Tony, I'm going to ask either you or Patricia. I can't really see the group. So however you want with questions, if one of you could take over who to call on, I would be so grateful because my phone doesn't. Yeah.
Yep, no problem. If you have a question, you can raise your hand in the reactions option, and then otherwise, jump and waving like this, like Patricia is. Go ahead, Patricia.
Well, Laura, I cannot tell everyone how proud I am of you, and seeing what you have grown into as such a magnificent leader. Just because so many of our members are local, would you give us a snapshot of your earlier career before Beyond Differences?
Thank you. They're so funny. I did want to say that because we are local. I live in Marin. My daughter went to school in Marin. All of our early forays into the school system was done thanks to the leadership of Superintendent Mary Jane Burke. I do want to say she's a personal friend. No one believed that we would ever bring a new program to a school system. And once it started in Marin, it went all over the United States. So I am a Bay Area girl, although a native New Yorker, and proud of it. And I just want for everybody to understand how this can't happen in many other places around the country, except for where we live in the Bay Area. So thanks to all of us for being here. My earlier career, Patricia is so funny. My husband is a political consultant. We met 40 years ago, working at City Hall as aides to the president of the Board of Supervisors back in the 1980s. We worked through the mayor's race of 1987. Our candidate lost. So we both looked at each other and said, well, we're both out of work. We might as well get married and come back and figure out what we're going to do with the rest of our lives. And that was, again, almost 40 years ago. My husband went on to become a brilliant strategist, running presidential campaigns, Senate races. Pretty much everybody in the state of California is his client. And I opened up a company doing fundraising consulting for political campaigns and nonprofits. So the jump to starting and noticing that Beyond Differences had potential was really through the children in the audiences that we first went out to speak with. And then it became a professional step for me to assume responsibility for running this nonprofit. It is not easy. It's like running a small company day in and day out. You just start all over again every year. But I know how to do it. And it's what I do now. Everybody have family members, children, and grandchildren to remember what it was like to go to middle school? It's not easy.
It is not easy.
No, I remember my two daughters when they were in middle school. It was the worst time of their lives.
Mine too.
Girls in middle school are the most vicious time, I think, in life, from my experience with my daughters having to experience it.
Yeah, my sister was left with a rage against those who, and as myself, I mean, I'm attending school instilled in me a hatred of the schooling system in this country. So hopefully this curriculum helps improve that.
Okay, Patricia, did you have your hand raised? you're muted.
I wondered if Randall wanted, because Randall made a comment about youth groups could make a big difference, 4-H, Scouts, youth. So I'll pass over to Randall to expand on his note in the chat.
Well, thanks, Patricia. It's a question as much as anything else for Laura that I'm thinking, because I grew up being in a 4-H club, very active. We had a youth group in our church. You got Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, sports teams. I've got 6 granddaughters all together, and I think all together, and some of them are still in school, that they were busy just about every night with soccer and swimming, whatever. So is there a way, Laura, that you're encouraging schools to have more activities like that, or religious organizations, so that helps out too?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a great question. We partner with Boys and Girls Club. We partner with faith-based organizations. Everyone is encouraged, and we spread a lot of messages these days through social media, and that knows no bounds. You know, you just basically want to bring in as many kids as you can and meet them where they're spending their time. So the answer is yes. And I do really want you to know that as dire as I think there is an issue here, that there are so many millions of children that want to do the right thing. And if they were basically inspired and given the tools to be kinder to one another, that is where we focus our efforts. It's not about, you know, all the dire negativity. It's really around lifting up children who really want to be part of the solution. And I do want to leave that message with you that there's a lot of positivity happening out there now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, Laura, my brother had polio, wore a brace, and I could tell you that if it weren't for those 5 boys at Boone Elementary School who didn't see the brace, invited him to play softball, made him be the pitcher, and my little brother run the bases as the pinch runner, I think everything would have been different. So those 5 kind boys, by the way, are now 5 old Zadies, and they are still best friends. So what you say about the kindness and the awareness, I just see it through my brother's life. And I'm awed by what you have done. It actually brings tears to my eyes. Both Patricia and I were at Lily's memorial and Shiva. But I also remember her humor, because Lily was funny. So to just see you here, it just means a lot to me. And I'm hoping that our club will spread the word, support beyond differences, and be grateful that if your children and grandchildren become those kind people, and be even more grateful if they're the recipient of that kind leadership.
Thank you, Susan. It's been such an honor this morning. Thank you for welcoming me. And the lineup next week and the week after looks fantastic. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Patricia, did you have anybody else have a question? Or...
Well, I would just like everyone to know, and perhaps Laura would have a couple more comments. Lili was very intelligent and confident. I remember seeing the photograph of her with Bill Clinton. Tell us about that situation.
Well, my husband, as I mentioned, is a consultant and works with the Democratic candidates and ran 3 primary states for Hillary Clinton's presidential bid in 2008. And during that year, Lili happened to be one of the 2 years that she was being homeschooled. And so she was not, restricted by vacations. She traveled with her dad. She flew by herself to Texas, to North Carolina, and she campaigned with my husband on the trail, passionate. She met Dolores Huerta. She met the Clintons. And Bill adored her, and Hillary did as well. And when the morning that Lili passed and the news got out very quickly, Hillary was Secretary of State under President Barack Obama. She literally got off an airplane and from the tarmac called Ace at home to tell him how devastated she was. At our gala coming up next Thursday, we have a very special treat. The former President Bill Clinton has recorded a message for his love of Lili. So this child she knew what she wanted, and she was an incredibly bright, she would have been 28 last Sunday. And I think about her every day and wonder what, she would have done with her life. But I hope she's proud of the work that we've done to keep her memory and her life alive with meaning, because she taught us a lot about what it was like to feel the way she felt, but overcome it by being brave, going off to a new school to meet new friends. And by the way, like literally like 2 nights before she passed away, a boy put his arm around her in the lobby of their school. And I think she was swooning all the way up to heaven. So I'm very happy that she found what she was looking for.
Yeah. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Betty, you had a question?
I did. Laura, thank you. What a powerful presentation. But what you do is absolutely amazing and incredible. Think of all the people you have helped and Lili has helped. It's just like a pebble in the pond, and it's just so impressive. Many things come to mind, but one of them is the word kind. And that's something that is so critical, that we need to teach kindness. And I feel like, how do you ever get by the middle school girls? And how do you instill in them being nice and being inclusive? That's another important word. So I was pleased when you said, don't be totally negative about it, because things are positive and moving forward. So that was great. Rich has 2 great nieces who are in the Larkspur, Corte Madera school system. They are amazing. They don't use their cell phones. They are kind. They're in sports. They are the epitome of what I would want middle school kids to all be like. So they're really excellent role models. Yet in their school system, there were a couple years ago, I don't know if it was middle school, anti-Jewish things on their school that were painted. And so how do you get to the parents and the kids? And how do the teachers get to the parents? And then my second question is, how do you deal with teachers that don't make comments when my granddaughter is bullied at school, for example? So those are 2 questions.
Yeah, I wish I had a perfect answer. The parent community is a difficult one to tackle, because first, we're small. We had to pick a lane and get very good in that. We decided to go with youth leadership, and second, to provide teachers with the tools that they need. And we could only do so much. We did parent events in the first few years and found oversold crowds, if you will, wanting to learn and know what they could do. So I agree with you that the need is out there for the parents. It's just not a constituency that we are able to really concentrate on, because we just don't have the bandwidth or the staff power to be able to partner with the PTAs, for example, or to be able to do parent education nights. I will tell you this, though, when we first got started and no one was talking about social media or loneliness or kindness, as I mentioned, we had a few parent education evenings and it was sold out, like hundreds of parents. The schools started realizing that they were not doing what they needed to do and started picking up some of the parent education evenings. And so I began to see more partnership happening from the school for the parent community. It's not up to a small nonprofit like ours to be able to do that. It's the school's responsibility. And so as much as I'd love to tell you that we could manage it all, we just could not. So basically we had to pick and get very good at what we were doing. So I apologize. It's not a great answer, but it's a need that's out there. Yeah.
You only can focus so much with your bandwidth. Thank you so much.
Exactly right.